This is tape 2. We're conducting an interview with Mrs. Judith Kerr, and we were just talking about your brother.
I was talking about my brother and about the remarkable British capacity for judging every case on its merits. One example was what I told you before about getting my brother out of the internment camp in the middle of a very dangerous war, as though they hadn't had anything else to think about at that time. The other one was allowing him to join the Air Force and allowing him to become an officer, although the first reaction was against it. But each time somebody said, no, this is wrong, this must happen. He couldn't fly on operations because they said it would be too dangerous for him to fly over enemy country, because if he'd been shot down, he wouldn't have been treated as a normal British officer. So he taught flying for most of the war. He got fed up with that, and so in the end they allowed him to fly over the sea, which wasn't enemy territory. That's another wonderful sort of arrangement. By this time the war was almost over, so it wasn't terribly dangerous, so he flew some operations. In my case, the flexibility was over giving me this the scholarship to art school, which even the trade scholarship I wasn't entitled to because I wasn't British born. But I went to see somebody at what was then called the LCC, the London County Council, and the man said, well, you're not you're not British born. But he didn't say, you're not British born, that's it. He said, you're not British born, what can we do? We must find a reason. I'm sure we can find some reason. And so then they decided, as I'd worked for the Red Cross and my brother had been in the Air Force, they could wangle it. This, I think, is one of the things I'm grateful for and very appreciative of. It's, I think, something remarkable. And after all, during the war they had a lot of other things to worry about, and immediately after the war as well. But they looked at what was there, and they didn't say, we have this rule, therefore you can't. Made a huge difference to me. Getting that scholarship meant everything to me.
When was that?
That was immediately after the war, 1945. I started in September 45. 3 years at art school. Marvelous.
Were you very determined to become an artist at the...
Yes, I think, in fact, I was always an illustrator. Certainly all my early drawings are illustrations, really. But once I got to art school and started drawing from life and painting, I became really hooked on painting. And I wasn't bad, I had paintings accepted by various quite reasonably prestigious exhibitions. I sold one or two. I suppose if I'd gone on doing that, I would have become a sort of nice second-rate painter. But I can't remember now whether I've told you all this before.
No.
Not on tape. Okay, that's all right then. After art school, I'd already had a job. I'm sorry, I'm confused. I can't remember what I've told you about the trade scholarship and all the rest of it. Have I told you about that on tape?
Yes, you have.
Okay.
So you received a trade scholarship?
Yes.
And you went to art school for 3 years?
Yes. The trade scholarship, I had to have a trade, and I got a job 2 days a week designing textiles for a textile designer. It had to be a trade, but I never did anything like that at art school. I just painted. And again, they let me. Nobody said, "Oh, you come here to do textiles. You must design textiles." They said, "Do what you like." After I left art school, I did various things. I taught art, and I sold some textile designs, and I painted. And I met my husband, who just started working in television. I was teaching at an art school, at an ordinary school, but I was teaching a special art course to junior art children who had a bit of talent, some very talented. And this school was across the road from the television studios, which was how I met him. And he suggested I should get a job as a reader for television, reading plays that got sent in by people. And I got the job. I applied and I got it because I could speak French and German, and they thought I could read French and German plays for them as well. And at that time, television was expanding at a tremendous rate, and so I became a script editor and finally a script writer. I think partly, or largely, I suspect, because my husband had by then written a hugely successful television serial called The Quatermass Experiment, the first of 3 Quatermass serials, which the first one really put television on the map in a way. Everybody watched. It was the first thing that everybody watched. And we got married on that, on the strength of that. And so I think they thought, if they got me to write something, if it turned out to be total rubbish, he would put it right. And I got the job of writing stuff for them. I wrote the serial, which did all right. And by then I was, by the time it went out, I was very pregnant with our daughter, and I left a fortnight before she was born. And then I did nothing at all for about 8 years, except looked after her and her brother. And then when they were both at school full-time, I thought, what shall I do now? And I got terribly irritated with the books I'd had to read to them when they were small, because there was a theory then that picture books for young children should contain lots of complicated words to increase their vocabulary, which was absolutely idiotic. And I got terribly fed up with translating these into words that they could understand while I was trying to cook the supper at the same time. And so I thought I'd try to do a picture book, which was based on a story I told my daughter when she was quite small, and which she had liked. And just using simple words, because quite young children, I mean, she was only barely 3 at the time, quite young children, I think can understand, they love stories even though they haven't had much experience and they haven't got very many words, but emotionally they are totally grown up. I mean, they have love and hate and jealousy, and they're very, very aware of